I'd like to call the October 23rd, 2024 meeting of the Ogden Town Board to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd ask that you remain standing for a moment of silent reflection and prayer for military servicemen and women serving around the world, as well as for our first responders. Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. We have quite the presentation for you. But first, I believe, Madam Clerk, we need to read the public hearing notice.
Public hearing on the 2025 preliminary budget and 2025 preliminary special district assessments for the town of Ogden. Notice is hereby given that the 2025 preliminary budget for the town of Ogden and the 2025 preliminary special district assessments for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2025 have been completed and will be available in the office of the town clerk at 269 Ogden Center Road, Spenceport, New York 14559 on October 10th, 2024, where it will be available for inspection by any interested persons during regular business hours. Further notice is hereby given that the town board of the town of Ogden will meet and further review the preliminary budget and special district assessments and will act on any other official business that may come before said meeting and will hold a public hearing thereon at the Ogden Community Center, 269 Ogden Center Road, Spenceport, New York 14559 at a regular meeting of the town board to be held on Wednesday, the 23rd day of October 2024 at 7 p.m. And at such public hearing, all interested persons heard in favor or against the preliminary budget. Pursuant to section 495 of the real property tax law, the property tax exemption impact report is also available in the town clerk's office. Pursuant to section 113 of town law, the proposed salaries of the following town officers are specified as follows. Supervisor, $96,600. Councilman 4 at $15,000 for $60,000 total. Town clerk, $85,680. Town justices, 2 at $42,000 for $84,000. Superintendent of Highway and Public Works, $108,558.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I want to recognize that we have a number of department heads here. Thank you for being in attendance. Obviously, this budget is comprised from the needs of each department, and each of you have taken a lot of time to put this budget together, along with the extra special honorable department head that is the finance director, who will be giving our presentation today. And I just want to recognize not just our department heads, but all of our other staff members who contribute to this. We have a lot of clerical staff that spend a tremendous amount of time making sure that the vision of this board comes to fruition. So without further ado, Sherry, take it away.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 preliminary budget presentation. Thank you for being here. Before I start, the compilation of this budget would not have been possible if it were not for the help and dedication of Ogden's department heads and staff. They generously answered about a bazillion of my questions and shared their knowledge with me. So I want to say thank you to them. And I'm also grateful for the support of this board and Supervisor Zana. Thank you. Let's get started. Okay. The total proposed budget, we are talking about expenditures of $16,384,280. This is an increase of approximately $564,000 over 2024's budget, or about 3.5%. This number is also the total budget of all of the town's funds, comprised of the next four components. The general fund, which is the town's major fund. The part-town fund, which sewer districts. Now we're getting to the good stuff, guys, we're into the tax information. Okay, the village townwide tax rate is $3.04 per $1,000 of assessed property value. Everyone in the town of Ogden and the village of Spencerport pays this amount. We also have the outside village rate. That total is $3.56. For the people living outside of the village of Spencerport, you must also pay for the outstanding services provided by the highway department, which is another 52 cents per $1,000 of assessed property value. So once again, that means you will pay $3.56 per $1,000 of assessed value in 2025. People who live in the village of Spencerport do not pay the extra assessment because the village has its own highway department. Here's a comparison of 22 to 24 actual tax rates, and then our proposed 2025 tax rates. If you look at the history on this slide, you can see that the tax rates were fairly consistent in 22, 23, and 24. But for 2025, there's an obvious marked change. This is due to the townwide reassessment that was just completed. This reassessment revalued all properties and brought them to the current market value. This revaluation usually occurs every 2 to 4 years. The last reassessment, however, occurred in 2018 before COVID hit. Now let's look at our tax cap. The tax cap is the maximum amount of taxes the town can levy in a given year. It is based on what was levied last year in 2024 with some adjustments. First adjustment is a rollover of approximately $80,000. This is the amount we were under the tax cap in 2024. The second adjustment is an exclusion of approximately $7,500 from the New York State retirement system. So with these factors considered, we had the ability to raise $9,395 in taxes. The town actually proposes to levy $8,896,334 in tax levy this year, which is $6,061 under the 2% tax cap. Here's our tax levy history in dollars. So you can see in 2022, we levied about $8.1 million. 2023, about $8.3 million. 2024, 8.6 million. And now in 2025, we're proposing 8.896,334. So let's look at some of the town's services. The general fund is the town's main operating fund, and it funds the following departments. It has a supervisor's department, town board, attorney, animal control, assessment, police, courts, recreation, highway administration, building and grounds, central services, finance, human resources, senior services, historian, library, civil defense, and the conservation board. So within this general fund, the $3.04 that you're paying your taxes, it is funding this general fund. The non-village tax rate is $3.56. This is comprised of our part-town fund, which does not include the village. This part-town fund has no tax levy at all. It is comprised of the following departments: building inspections, parks, planning board and zoning board, street lighting, cemetery, and emergency preparedness. As I mentioned, this part-time fund has no tax levy. This fund is primarily funded by sales tax, fees collected by the building department, and a few miscellaneous other things. Again, no tax burden to the taxpayers. to support the functions of this fund. It is comprised of street maintenance, snow removal, brush and weeds, leaves, machinery, and services to other governments. Also, we have our special districts. There are 4 of them. There's a drainage district, that is for surface water. We have 2 sanitary sewer districts, the Consolidated Sewer District and the Bella Sewer District. We have 6 lighting districts, and we have the ambulance district. Let's look a little deeper into these special districts. You can start at the top and you can see the ambulance district. I have included 2024 tax levy numbers for your convenience. But as you look at this, there are $683,000 of expenditures that are expected in this budget this year. This will totally be raised by taxes. There will be a 36 cents per $1,000 of assessed value for the ambulance district put on everyone's taxes this year. The next 6 lines are the lighting districts for the town of Ogden. So these lighting districts, what is a lighting district? Well, this is for residents who perhaps wanted a street light in their neighborhood. These districts have to pay for the lights, the fixtures, the repairs, the energy usage, and we charge them through our taxes for these districts. This is a one-time charge per year on your taxes. So if you live, for instance, in the Inglewood Lighting District, you will pay, as you can see in the 2025 tax rate column, you will pay $37.89, a one-time charge. And based on the people in that district, that will cover the expenditures. It will raise $3,675 for this district. The Dresser Lighting District, you'll pay $27.75. We're also using fund balance in this fund, so we're only raising taxes of $555. The Lockwood Estates Lighting, $1,040 of expected expenditures. Fund balance used will be $100. Amount to be raised in taxes, $940. Your flat rate is $20.89. You can see the same, like Hickory Hollow, your rate is $37.06. Arbor Creek, yours is $54.30. And the Consolidated Lighting District, the largest, is $110.46. Again, a one-time charge for these. Continuing to have the town-wide drainage. The village does not pay this. We have some revenues coming into this fund. $24,500 is anticipated. This is for drainage work that's done by the highway department for residents. We have some fund balance used of about $4,000 in this fund, leaving a amount to be raised by taxes of about $210,000. Once again, it's a one-time charge of $32.74 to support this town-wide drainage. Our 2 sewer districts, there are some revenues in the consolidated sewer. This is comprised of inspection fees and interest. We are projecting to use $25,000 of fund balance in this district. Taxes raised, a little over $390,000. One-time charge for Bella will be $28.67, and a one-time charge for consolidated sewer will be $359.10. Our budget assumptions and projects. The first thing is, the town of Ogden continues to have no debt, and we are not expected to incur any in 2025. There is a cost of living adjustment in the budget this year. It is 2% for 2025. Merit steps are planned where appropriate in the budget. There's an increase in cost for utilities this year. There's an increase in health insurance cost. This increase was 15.99%. We have over 50 people on the town's health care. It was a large increase. We have an increase in the retirees' Medicare health insurance cost. This is the insurance the town pays for the qualifying retirees who are over the age of 65. We currently have 29 retirees on this insurance, and the cost of their insurance will increase still don't know what these actual costs are going to be. So we budgeted worst-case scenario as we were instructed by our insurance company. We also have increasing costs for the New York State retirement. There are all different rates that play into this retirement payment, but the increase is approximately 17%. I also wanted to note that we do not have any full-time staff positions, new full-time staff positions planned for 2025. A few of the projects that we're working on for this year, we always include heat pump replacements, as unfortunately, they seem to like to die on the coldest days or the hottest days. So we always have to budget for heat pump replacements at the town of Ogden. We are in the process of replacing some of the exterior steel doors at the town. Many of them are being replaced are older and rusting. They are no longer energy efficient and they have bad seals. We have 2 vehicle replacements scheduled for 2025, one in the police department and one for the animal control department. We have elevator repairs that are in the budget this year. Our elevator is needed for ADA and for simply allowing participants to access the 2nd floor of Town Hall. We also have an update to the police booking area that's in the budget. It needs to be updated to be brought into New York State code. There's a new mower and tractor that are in the budget. This is for our Parks Department to help them to continue to do their services that they do in the parks. We have snow and ice equipment and new trailers that are a budget for the Highway Department to help them maintain their level of service to the town. We also have pump station repairs. These are needed to be sure that the pump stations affected will continue to work properly and not fail. And we have a project that is a town-wide signage project in our budget for next year. And this project will be extremely helpful to our residents. There have been many times that people have come and asked me, and probably many of the people who are in here today who work for the town of Ogden, where is the library? Or where is the court? Or where is the recreation department? This signage project will help to shed light on where town offices are actually located, like where the library is located also. But this will also help people to find the town parks and where they're located. So it'll help our residents to navigate their way easily through the town and to take advantage of the amazing resources this beautiful town has to offer. So that is our town-wide signage project. Here is our preliminary budget. Let's look at what our appropriations and estimated revenues are along with fund balance to be used estimated. The general fund, our primary fund, has $8,787,795 in appropriations. There are approximately $1.4 million of revenues that will be earned in this fund from things like fees, mortgage tax, grants, interest. And then we're anticipating $845,000 of fund balance to be used, which gives us a tax levy of $6.5 million in this fund. Our part-town fund has total appropriations of $1.5 million. We anticipate $1.26 million to be brought in as estimated revenues, primarily from sales tax and fees collected on interest, $265,000 of fund balance, and as mentioned, this fund has no tax levy at all, no impact to the taxpayers. Our highway department, also non-village, is $4.55 million in appropriations. Estimated revenues to be raised in this department is $2.3 million. This will come from sales tax, interest, fees, snow and ice payments, highway aid, service to other departments. We're anticipating using $1.3 million of fund balance and a total tax levy of $946,000 in this fund. Our town-wide drainage total cost almost $239,000. We anticipate $24,500 of revenue to be earned in this account from interest and lawn piping work done by the highway department. We've appropriated approximately $4,000 of fund balance special districts. Again, ambulance, lighting, drainage, and sewer. These are our special districts. Their total appropriations are approximately $1.3 million. Estimated revenues, about $12,500. Anticipated use of fund balance, a little over $26,000, with a total tax levy of $1.239 million. As you look at the totals on this page, total appropriations ties into our total budget announced before. Our total tax levy ties into the tax cap that we spoke about earlier. Maybe you're wondering what some of our major departments actually are at the town of Ogden. So, our total budget, as mentioned, is $16,384,280. Here are some of the departments that people ask about. Safety inspection, total appropriations about $609,000, or 3.72% of the total budget. The library department, $659,800, or 4.03% of the total budget. The ambulance district, $683,010, or 4.17% of the total budget. Parks, $758,710, or 4.63% of the total budget. Recreation, $944,320, or 5.7576% of the total budget. Police, all activities, includes animal control and special police, $3.638 million, or 22.21% of the total budget. And our highway, it's all of the Fund 3 departments, $4.55 million, or 27.79% of the total budget. So the general fund expense, I've already talked about the police department, the animal control, recreation, library. These are all general fund departments. But we have other departments within the general fund. We have departments that have expenses between 2 and 5% of the general fund budget. These departments are the supervisor, the town clerk tax collection, assessment, town court, central services, finance, and human resources. We also have departments with less than 2% of the total general fund budget. Town board, attorney, historian, and conservation board. Now, just because these budgets are less than 2% of the total general fund budget doesn't mean that these departments are less important. It just means that these departments have fewer operating costs. The general fund, I'd like to show for you categorically. So when we're looking at the total budget, 2025 budget of $8.7 million, 43% of that is for personnel. This is what we pay all of the staff at the town of Ogden. 27% of this is for employee benefits. This is for Social Security, for Medicare, for health insurance, vision insurance, dental insurance, and for New York State retirement costs. 5% is for equipment. And 25% is for contracted services. This is everything else that we buy in the town of Ogden. It's software, it's support, it's contracts for services, it's paper, pencils, electricity, training, everything else. And you can see from the 2024 column that these costs have remained consistent in the general fund. Okay, so now we're looking at our part-town expenses. Part-town, once again, non-village. Nobody who lives in the village of Spencerport is part of part-town. The primary departments that we have in the part-town fund are the building inspection departments. It includes GIS services. Their total costs are $609,620, comprising 39.96% of the budget. Our other major department in this fund is the Parks Department. It has $758,710 of expenditures budgeted for a total of 49.73% of this budget. We have departments with less than 5% of the total part-time fund. These are street lighting, planning board, zoning board, and Personnel accounts for 38% of the total budget. Employee benefits, 22%. Equipment, 4%. And contracted services, 36%. Our highway expense highlights. Street maintenance comprises $2,834,640 of the total budget. That is 62.25%. Other government services, $456,340 or 10.02%. And machinery and maintenance, $393,035 and 8.63%. There are departments within the highway fund that have less than 5% of the total highway budget. It's brush and weeds, snow removal, and permanent highway improvements. Categorically, the highway fund has 30% of their total budget going to personnel costs, 22% for employee benefits, 8% for equipment, and 40% for contracted services. And that, friends, is the 2025 preliminary budget for the town of Ogden.
Wow. That was only the Cliff Notes, actually. So at this time, because this is a public hearing, if anybody has questions specifically on this budget, we'd ask that you come forward, state your name, your address, and fire away. And I'm not sure who will answer, but it'll probably be Sherry.
Linda Jabardo, 110 Ogden Center Road. I just had a question about the building inspection.
Yes.
So it wasn't included as part of the village, but don't we share that resource with the village?
I can answer that. So, yes. The reason that it's not listed the way that you think it is because it is not a taxed service of the village. The village literally contracts with the town for the service. And you have to remember that there's a difference between code enforcement and building inspection. The town does the building inspection. The village has their own person for code enforcement. So in order to save actually the village money, they enter into an intermunicipal agreement for our services. Yep, they just basically.
Which isn't shown on that.
It would be, well, I think you're right in a roundabout way. It would be shown in our revenues for the Part-Town Fund. So yes, yeah, you're very well. This budget is not an easy thing to understand simply because there's also a village, and the breakdown of where things are paid for can be confusing. One other thing, sorry to interrupt, not that I'm interrupting, but what's very strange is when we talk about our Parks and Rec Department as one uniform thing, the Recreation Department, for the most part, is part of the general fund, but the Parks Department is the Park-Town Fund. In other words, the village doesn't pay for the parks. I don't know who came up with this, but that is what we are instructed to fund, so. Hi, good evening.
Aurora Bennion from 115 Marcus Drive. I have a question for the highway budget. It's item 4520.
Go ahead.
I'm curious about the increase. This is for public relations. In 2023, there was a $664 budget for public relations. 2024, $918. And 2025 is $2,000. That's the same, I believe, as the town's public relations budget. I'm just curious why they're the same.
What was the number again?
So it started, the first listed is 2023, it had $664, and it's increased to $2,000.
We're talking highway.
Highway.
So is this related
shredding we paid for.
So there is advertising that is done for these services that the highway puts on. This is, I believe, the majority of that account.
And prices have gone up 4 times the rate.
We didn't do it before. We just opted in the last 2 years. We never offered
So
shredding.
2023, you spent $664 to advertise the 2 events?
Yes, no,
And then-
just not just those 2 events, there's other things that we advertise for too. I don't know.
And you
what the-
anticipate spending $2,000 in 2025 to
Yeah, I think
advertise?
it's like, 1,200, don't hold me to that, but I think it's like $1,200 for the, Lee Michael answer that, that we pay for the shredding, company that come in to do that for us.
But that's public relations budget? Pay for shredding?
It's something we give back to the community.
Cool. My next question is item 1210 in the highway budget. I'm curious also the rates and prices. So 2023, there was $2,340 budgeted for drainage engineers. And 2025, there's $17,500 budgeted.
That
Is there, you're smiling, is there a story?
Oh, there is, because there's been so much work that has been done on drainage issues in the town that we realized that that amount was inadequate. So based on the work that is estimated for 2025, we feel that is a very real and reasonable expense guesstimate.
So we think maybe the drainage budget will be balancing because it's been continuously overdrawn in 2024?
There was just that much work. I mean, that budget is, as a guess, it's our best estimate, and there was a lot of budget work that highway
Yeah, I mean,
department has been working on.
$15,000.
Absolutely. So
It's
there has been a lot that they're working on, and we want to be sure they have adequate to continue what is expected and unknown in 2020.
But I think you point out an appropriate thing, and that is we have had to make budget adjustments this year because of the amount of work. And since it's kind of hard to tell as projects come up and available for us, it's kind of hard to tell what that number is going to be. So we made an adjustment, a better guess, I would say, this year, so that hopefully those budget adjustments are much less.
And then last one is item 4,600. Contractual services. So in 2024, the actual expenditure was $8,105.99. For 2025, it's $32,500.
So this is actual to date through September is what your actual is looking at.
Is $8,000.
$8,000. There are big expenses that come up at the end of the year that are not reflected in that dollar amount. Through meeting with the highway superintendent and his staff, they felt that this was a very fair number for the contractual expenses that the town has. I believe also that this includes, and Elaine's here, I believe this includes the GIS. Am I talking GIS, right? The increase in our GIS services. We lost our GIS
But we changed,
contract,
we changed
Our-
vendors on our GS and we're using a new vendor and that's what we're switching over to. We've cut back on their money that's being paid to them and using a new vendor. This year that we're doing a lot more with GIS.
And that's a big increase.
Yes,
Big
it was.
increase.
It is.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that wishes to address the board on the budget?
Hi, good evening. Ellen Robler, 221 Hilltop Lane. In the general fund list of items in the presentation, there was a line item for civil defense. And in the part-town fund, there was a line item for emergency preparedness. Can you explain the difference between those two?
So the civil defense is our special police. This is our primarily it's our volunteer police officers who come in and help when we have a special event, some of them go to like the canal days
Mhm.
and the different functions in the town.
House checks.
Yeah.
So they do these services for us. There is a small budget for them to buy the things that they need, the safety equipment that they need, the vests that they need. All of that stuff is budgeted in that fund, in that line item.
And those have to get replaced every year?
They get replaced when they are defunct. They
I'll also say this, because I want to look for the number two. It's next to nothing.
Okay.
And when you're talking about,
6,000.
yeah, when you're talking about getting an additional 10 police officers for $6,000 a year,
Right.
it's unbelievable what our special police department does.
Yeah.
It's a fair question. It's
No
a good
argument
question.
there. And then what are the items that would fall under emergency preparedness?
That's in the highway. That's in the highway department where we have emergency preparedness. We have a person over there who's preparing for what, if we were to get a disaster or something, that's part of the money that we work on is that. Addressed in a room over there. I think Mike's explained in a few meetings, quite a few meetings.
Okay.
We've updated it constantly about what we're doing with it. We had somebody did emergency preparedness for us 16 years ago, and it went kind of by the wayside. And I brought it back 2 years ago with emergency, a guy who does our safety and stuff. And that's his position with emergency preparedness.
Yeah, when we came in here, we were asking questions about emergency preparedness, and we found out that our emergency preparedness manual had not been updated. I think the last time was 2015.
Quite a
And-
long time ago.
Yeah,
Yes.
and nobody was quite sure who was supposed to be in charge of that, which is not the best, I would say. And so in conversations and creating a position, not just for safety and training in the highway department, but for the town to have that book updated, and then to have these pretty regular meetings on safety and disaster areas. I mean, I've gotten specific training on that, and even just recognizing what the plan is in an emergency is, safety has to be part of first. So, but it's a great question, yeah.
And then my last question, there was a list on here of the 2025 project highlights, which many of, they sound like great ideas. I'm all for, better signage and, things like that. Would it have been possible to put any of that ARPA money towards those projects?
So one caveat, I know we've had a lot of conversations on some of this stuff, but one of the things that we tried very hard not to do with ARPA is to substitute budgetary dollars for ARPA. In other words, when we're looking at one-time expenditures that should last a good long time, projects that we haven't been able to fund otherwise, because as Mrs. Foley, I've never called you Mrs. Foley ever once. As Sherry mentioned, the town doesn't have debt, and I'll tell you this, and I promise I'll get to the actual answer, but one of the problems in not having debt is that you're never offloading the debt and then picking up new debt with the same budgetary dollars. So, for instance, in other towns, when certain debt is realized, you're left with a couple $100,000 maybe of money that's not encumbered, that can then be moved into a new huge project. It's one of the reasons Chi-Li was able to fund a $27 million rec facility. Here, we don't have that, so anytime we increase, or we want a new project, it either has to be in increments or we raise taxes. And so it makes it very difficult to come up with some huge line item like a splash pad. And so that's where we have to be very specific in how we used ARPA funds. So, to summarize, we decided we didn't want ARPA to be a substitution for something that we budget, for the most part.
But we called them special projects.
They are special projects because we could just put one number and say the rec department just gets this amount of money, and then throughout the year, they could just figure it out. What we have done in our budget is we have told trust me, the department heads don't love that we made these changes, but we said you will be articulating what that money is for. You don't just have a fund of $200,000 that you're not telling us about, and then throughout the year you just make up a project. So yeah, that's why.
Okay.
Also, you don't, unless you came to the town hall where you actually read through this, you wouldn't know that. So the reason we're doing that is to just point out that these are some of the things that are part of the budget.
Are we still considering using that ARPA money for the fuel?
There are 2 work sessions that we want to talk about tonight, and at the end of the day, the town board gets to decide whether or not a project goes forward, and it's really kind of my job as the treasurer of the town to determine the best resources and the best funds for that. So yes, but also the board has made no decision on that at this time.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else that would like to address the board on the topic of the 2025 budget? Ooh, I was just about to close it.
Alan Baker, 101 Hawthorne Drive. Just wondering why you need signage for where things are when everything's right on the left.
It is a good question, and what I would say is that we're always looking to try to find better ways to point out where our things are. Everybody knows where Pineway Ponds is. That's pretty simple. We have a lot more parks than that are not as obvious. And I will say that we often find ourselves, as Sherry had mentioned, with people that start wandering through the building not sure where things are. If you've been here before, and if you've used the library, and if you've used things like that, then yeah, you figure it out, you know where the library is every time, but that's just not the case all the time. If you notice in the very front vestibule, there are no signs. So once you walk in, that's where it tells you where the library and the other things are. And that was predetermined a long time ago. So this year, we're starting the process by actually consulting with someone who can articulate. And I think the highway superintendent will tell you that often, especially with deliveries or things like that, people will come to this building or that building, not sure which building they're supposed to go to. We're not talking about a major expense, but we are talking about something that really hasn't been done probably since this building was built. And so we're starting with, somebody that can help us articulate that better before we actually spend the dollars. But in 2025 is where we set aside some money for that. As our budget has consistently shown, we don't always spend every penny of that budget. So I hope that it helps answer. Okay, thank you. Anybody else on the 2025 budget? Okay, I will close this public hearing for the 2025 budget. We will have privilege of the floor soon, and so if you forgot and wanted to ask a question, you can do that then. Thank you for being here. Sherry, thank you so much. A tremendous job on that budget presentation, very informative. Thank you so much. Okay, now I have something extremely special to do, so I would ask Donna Taylor, your family, if they'd like to come up, and board members and anybody up here that would like to join me up there for a presentation. Okay, I would like for everybody to meet Miss Donna Taylor, and tomorrow, Donna will start her 30th year of employment at the town of Ogden. I said today to her, I said, man, tomorrow's a big day. She's like, why? And I guess I really want to just say this, Donna has served under 3 different supervisors, and she has fulfilled a couple of different roles. And in any transition, it's always difficult to assume something different than you've done for many, many years. And so when I got here and when we needed to make a change in the front reception area, and we took a look at what Donna did. First of all, most people that don't know how to do something, almost everyone exclusively was like, it's probably Donna. Donna really heads up all of the extras, everything that has to do with central services that no one department does, and she shares that responsibility with herself. And so we're very grateful for her being the go-to person for the things that we need. And I'll also say this, when we were in a bit of a transition in the finance department, the person that was called on to help out, Donna. When we had a transition in reception, Donna. HR, Donna. I mean, well, first of all, it helps that you've got the context, having been here for 30 years. But just being somebody that is the relied upon person is quite the crown, regardless of any, well, maybe it's also a burden. But regardless of what the title truly is, I think that's the biggest one, the person that we rely on. So I have something for you, and I was supposed to ask ahead of time if you wanted to say something, and I heard that there was mixed feelings on that. But, and now I'm calling you out, which is really not nice.
She has something to say.
Oh, good, okay, all right. I'm not going to. I wanted to share this with you. It says, in honor of Donna Taylor, celebrating 30 years of dedicated service with deep gratitude for your hard work and unwavering commitment to the residents of the town of Ogden, October 24th, which is tomorrow, 2024. Well,
Well, because I was gonna be babysitting my new granddaughter.
Oh,
And
your
that
new
was-
granddaughter? Yeah. go
Yeah,
ahead.
well, when I first got this job, I almost didn't take it. I had to think about it for a while because I had a new granddaughter who was born in June of 1994. So I didn't think I'd be able to babysit anymore, but it worked out. It worked out. Thank you very much. This is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, okay.
You're front and center, don't hide. Why don't we have friends and family come in too, and we'll step back a little bit. Come on in. Or do you want photos?
Yeah, sure.
Come on.
Well, you too, Mike.
Here, we'll do these people on this side. And you guys.
He'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Josh, can you step forward? Sal, can you step forward? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just wanted to make sure.
I think I'll take a couple of pictures.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you. Thank you, William. Thank you.
And thank you so much for your family that was able to be here with you. You guys are awesome. Thank you for,
Thank you for the presentation, we appreciate it.
very welcome. Sorry that she turned down the job you were offering in exchange for
I
ours.
encouraged her today, I said, are you crazy? You have a career waiting for you, go do it.
Turns out. Very good. Thank you, guys. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Entertaining a motion and second for Resolution 258.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Gervino, seconded by Councilman Hinman. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next, we have privilege of the floor. Different from what we just did, if you have any topic to discuss with the board, please come forward and state your name and address. And as I like to say from time to time, doesn't necessarily mean that the board will respond, but that we are here to listen and respond if that is appropriate. So anybody that would like to come forward? Of course.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, all around me. My name is Carol Nellis-Schewel. I'm Deputy Mayor in the Village of Spencerport, and I also serve as President of the Board of Directors of the Ogden Senior Center. I wanted to be here to make a suggestion to the board, and it is very simple. I would like to see this building, as do others, like to see this building named the Gay H. Lenhard Community Center. So if you would consider that as you do your renovations, it would greatly appreciated. I also want to speak as the board member and president of the Ogden Senior Center. I have to recognize someone who has been invaluable to me as we've negotiated, as we have continually seen a couple of changes in our personnel there, and that's Ogden Parks and Rec Director Andre Hansen. So let me just recognize you for always having time for me, always answering my emails, and I know you have other things besides the senior center, but I want to reiterate too that these people, and I am one, are so important to this community, and please consider and remember that that is the case. So as you consider changes, please do the best for them. And I appreciate you listening to me, and I am part of a kinder, gentler government. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anybody else that wishes to address the board at this time?
Good evening, Linda Gilberto, 110 Ogden Center Road. At the September 11th meeting, I requested a cost-benefit analysis for the proposed fuel station that was discussed. I received a hard copy of a spreadsheet that was created by Councilman Thomas. At the September 25th meeting, I presented a very detailed and in-depth analysis of the fuel data used by the town. The board tabled the resolution based on that information that was presented. In the October 9th meeting, as part of Mr. Tom's report, he stated his response to that presentation during his report. And one of his quotes in that was, "This was never intended to be a return on investment worksheet or anything like that of that type of document. It was clearly to address questions that were presented by other board members around this purchase, this funding. So I created the spreadsheet to outline the cost, the savings on gas for us and diesel, and the potential revenue based on the 2023 usage to address those questions." So it really was a cost-benefit analysis. Do we agree with that? Or no?
It wasn't a return on investment.
No, it
document.
wasn't return on
Right.
investment, it was cost analysis, perfect. Cost-benefit analysis, yep. You stated in that meeting that with the $27,000 a year savings as well as any potential revenue above, that shows the project would pay itself for over its useful life, and that is actually a bonus. What I clearly articulated in the meeting on the 25th, that not all the costs associated with the fuel station were considered in the analysis. This makes the payback more than what Mr. Thomas had originally calculated. Kind of irrelevant because the revenue isn't really important on this. The phrase "over its useful life" is troublesome as well. In the September meeting, I, as well as another community member, highlighted that alternative fuels and other types of vehicles such as electric vehicles were not considered. A lot can change and will change in the next 30 years, which is the estimate for the payback on this, 30-plus years. Mr. Tom's next statement was, "None of the other expenses in the highway department show any return on investment or pay for themselves." Getting back to what we just discussed, my earlier statement, that what was documented was a cost-benefit analysis, not a return on investment. I, for one, and probably most of the community members, don't expect that the expenses incurred by the highway department show return on investment. What the use of taxpayer money needs to show is a benefit to the community, right? Either directly or indirectly. Purchasing grapple trucks to pick up brush and leaf pickup vehicles for several thousands of dollars are certainly services that provide benefits to the community. That was the comparison Mr. Thomas made. So comparing a fuel station, which does not benefit the members of the community, seems to me to be a strange and really irrelevant comparison. Mr. Thomas then stated that the highway department gets their diesel from the DOT across the street unless the system is down. Then they use another facility, such as a retail location like Burn Dairy. Again, in the analysis I did of the data that I explained in September, year, for a reminder, in 2021, the WEX cards were used 1% of the time, and none of those were for diesel, not a single one. In 2022, the WEX cards were used 0.3% for 3 diesel transactions. In 2023, WEX cards were used for 2.3% of the time due to an issue with the pumps at the DOT, which were resolved and have not recurred. Also stated there would be a benefit to the DOT of the town having their own fuel system that they could use for redundancy in case they had issues. Additionally, the DOT employee indicated that the advantage to the town highway superintendent would give him peace of mind knowing he had his own system. As I stated in my summary on September 25th, there is no financial advantage to having this fuel station. Additionally, the data does not support any issues with availability, convenience, or safety. I do not see any justification for an expenditure of over $800,000 so that the state DOT has a redundant system in case theirs goes down, or the peace of mind for the highway superintendent, given the data on downtime and availability. The one thing that was brought up by Mr. Towns that is very legitimate, it's a legitimate concern, is that there is also a shared services agreement with DOT, but it doesn't include the fuel. Very legitimate. And although it's extremely concerning that this was not known by whoever is responsible for that contract prior to proposing this fuel station, the answer to eliminate this risk is to include fuel in the agreement with the DOT within the next few years to eliminate that risk, not to spend thousands of dollars that could be better used for the community. As a taxpayer, and I own 4 properties in this town, I pay a lot of taxes, and a concerned citizen, I'm asking once again that the board reject this proposal for the fuel station project and use the money more wisely.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to address the board at this time?
Dave Ryan, 39 Sandstone Drive. Mike, this is pretty much gonna be all directed at you, so.
Great.
I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude for your ongoing support and collaboration regarding the extension of the parental leave policy to union employees via standard union procedure in the form of an MOA, memorandum of agreement. The last meeting I spoke to you and the rest of the board about not including the union employees in that policy. After further investigation and discussion, you and I were able to identify that the town received inaccurate information concerning the ability to allow union employees to share the same parental leave policy as non-union employees. I appreciate your understanding and openness as we navigated this exercise, ensuring we arrive at the best possible solution for represented employees. My concern is that you were given wrong information from a source that should know and understand the MOA process. I believe one thing we both can take away from this is the need to substantiate the information we were given. Mike, your commitment to fostering a supportive work environment is very much appreciated and commendable. I'm confident with the exchange of accurate information and open communication, we can continually and effectively navigate this path. Thank you once again for the cooperation with this MOA, and I look forward to our continued open line of communication. I hope the board votes to approve this and shows the same support that you have. Thanks.
Thank you. Not exactly what I expected, but thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to address the board at this time?
Hi, Mark Geringer, 200 Ogden Center Road. I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
Try to make them concise, and we'll go from there. Question number 1. The Amazon building on Shepherd Road.
Yes.
Are we getting tax dollars from that property or not?
We have a pilot agreement, payment in lieu of taxes, that is established by the county. It's a 15-year pilot. I think at it's split in half, which you cannot do with the number 15. So I think it's 8 and 7 as far as percentages that they pay in lieu of paying their taxes. They're on year 3 or about to be on year 3. And so we do get a payment in lieu of that, but that is an arrangement that is through Comida. That is a county operation. What I will tell you, and maybe this answers your next question, is that we have actually received partial payment for their build-out permit. So they are not only engaged with us, but they are going to start moving in.
Okay. According to the Monroe County Property Portal, it doesn't show that they've paid any taxes yet.
I had a very polite but elevated conversation with the people at Comida, because we do not get updates from them, and I think that that is wrong, because it is the taxpayers that are the ones that are in lieu of having those tax dollars. And Amazon, that was on a Friday, and Amazon, as well as one of the people from Comida, were in my office on Monday, which again does not encourage me to not have elevated but polite conversations. It just encourages me to continue doing that.
And did our town have any choice in that situation? Were we able to be involved with whether we chose to give them that tax abatement or deferral?
No,
Or did the county just mandate it?
They do ask for letters of support as far as when these types of projects come in. I don't know what would have happened if the town had said, no, we don't support it, but ultimately it is the county that has the authority and the ability to give that tax break. This body and the assessor in the town of Ogden do not have the ability to do that. And so I would say,
Could we have refused it?
I think we could have sent a letter saying that we don't support it, but what I'm saying is the jurisdiction is the county, so I believe the county could have done it anyways. I'll also say that that project was approved before any single one of us were on this board. Not to, that's not a blame casting, it's just stating a fact.
Yeah, I just, it shows that it's assessed at 21 million. So obviously that would be a big.
We'd be having a different budget conversation right now.
Yes, and so I just encourage this board that going forward, if those types of proposals come in, we really take a hard look at, we don't seem to have any recourse.
The one thing that I might suggest, though, and this would be a great cup of coffee conversation, is that at the end of the day, that land that was there was vacant. And so the option is to eventually receive taxes on this or not. It doesn't.
We have been receiving taxes on the vacant land.
Well, you do still receive money for the property. It's just not in the amount of the $28 million assessed value. So my point is to say is that you either agree or decide that you want to eventually have that or decide not to. And if it's sold, that's the other part that you don't really get much of a say on, right?
Yeah.
If it's zoned a certain way and a developer comes in for that, so long as it follows the code, not even the planning board or zoning board or this board gets to say you can't do it.
Okay, thank you. Question as far as the building department getting another truck.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if this question is for this or for this, but at
Sure.
any rate, how many trucks do they currently have?
There's one truck. There is one,
2 trucks.
2 trucks.
2 trucks in the Traverse.
There's a,
Brian's pickup, fire marshal's pickup, and the Traverse.
okay, there you go. I know there's 3 vehicles.
So they have 3 vehicles.
That's correct.
How many people leave the building and go on inspections?
3, could be 4.
Could be 4. I mean, it just seems that, could they schedule their time for the inspections? I mean, that just seems like a lot of vehicles for the number of inspections. Like, how many do we do a week?
Quite a few. A week, a day. I mean, the one thing that I will tell you is that right now we currently benefit from the fact that our fire marshal is also the fire chief. And so, not that they double dip vehicles or things like that, but the fire marshal will not be the chief in January. On top of that, those 3 vehicles are not just for the building department. Those 3 vehicles are shared with every staff member in this building outside of rec. Rec has 1 vehicle. So anytime we need to make runs to the bank, anytime that there are meetings, which we have quite a few for health and wellness, for our consortium, for, we have something called, FlimHit and our workers' comp. Anytime there's a training, we ask our employees to take town vehicles. So anytime one of those is missing, the building department has less to go do the inspections that they do. And I'll also say it's not just inspections. There's on-site meetings, there's what we call DRC meetings, there's pre-construction meetings. There's absolutely a reason that we have 3 of these vehicles, yes.
Just doesn't seem very conservative to me. And it just seems that we used to be able to do it in cars or sedans, and now everybody needs a truck, which is expensive and not as good a fuel economy.
Well, one of the things that they do when they're inspecting is that they're a lot of times going onto property that is yet to be developed. So they're often in areas where a truck is necessary, I would say, not even just useful. We also currently, we've had in the past 7-passenger Traverses, which we didn't think was necessary, and then 5-passenger Equinoxes, which again is great if we're all traveling to a training and we're using 1 car instead of 5. And so that's why that's there. And with the sale of a vehicle and the use of sales tax revenue, you'll notice also in the what we call the 2 fund, the part-town fund, there actually is no tax levy. So there, again, we talked about this before. It's my left pocket or my right pocket, but at the end of the day, that department does not have a tax burden that is placed upon the residents.
Well, the residents still pay the fees that provide those funds.
But the residents pay the fees when they want to do something. So it's not, I'm not charging you for something that Councilman Baker wants to do.
Yeah, okay. Speaking of vehicles, the police department, how many vehicles do they have?
I don't know that off the top of my head. It's gotta be close to 10.
Close to 10. Do we happen to know how many officers they have on road patrol at any one shift?
At any one shift, there are 2 full-time officers. There could be a part-time officer. There is the police chief, there is the investigator, and there is the sergeant that's on duty. So at any one time, like, what, 6 or 7?
Once again, it just doesn't seem very conservative when you're paying insurance on all those vehicles.
Not all of them. I mean, I'm gonna say this in
Why
general.
so many vehicles if we don't even have enough people to drive them?
Well, some are also for the special police.
Yep.
When we
But
have
those
events
are
and
rare
things like that.
occasions.
Oh, they're not that rare.
I think special police, again, the cost of 1 officer, I would say, with salary, benefits, retirement, everything, is about $150,000.
Well, I'm not
So-
advocating against the special police at all. I'm just saying, how many vehicles do we
Well,
really need?
I would politely suggest that we need to give special police vehicles, and they do house calls on a daily basis. Just because we only do canal days once a year doesn't mean that that's the only time that they are activated to do things, so. Your point is well taken. What I would say is that, we ordered a police vehicle a year and a half ago, and we got it last week. So we're also operating with vehicles that are older. In fact, old enough that they are starting to become issues. You're also talking about relatively high performance. It's a Ford Explorer, they're not Ferraris, but, higher performance vehicles that are necessary for, the job that's at hand. So I will say this, just to end that part, although you can continue, is I'm extremely confident that the level of vehicles that we have is appropriate. That's why it's budgeted that way. If I didn't believe in it, you wouldn't have seen a budget that reflected that.
Okay. How much money do we have in savings? How much was left over from the budget last year?
We won't know that because it's October.
Okay.
But typically, when you saw Sherry explain the amount that we use in reserves, typically we do not tap into that. So when we talk about how we're using 800,000 in this reserve, 1.3 million in that reserve, typically, we do not get to that level. So that amount that we earmark from our savings, it literally just rolls over into the next year. I'm not saying that we get another 1.5 million or 800,000. It's just that we don't spend that. So I would say that this year, especially in the general fund, we're gonna be pretty tight. But that to me says that that's kind of an effective budget. I don't wanna overtax, but I also definitely don't wanna run out of money.
So what would you say, how much slush money is available for capital projects that, for next year?
I have it somewhere if you ever wanna sat down. The problem is that we're not only, darn it, I know exactly where it is too, because we had this conversation. The problem is that when you talk about a savings account, and again, I can give you actual exact dollars. There is never anything hidden in this town from my standpoint, so I can literally give you the sheet that Sherry created. When it comes to reserves, we are self-insured when it comes to things like workers' comp. So we have a reserve fund of $550,000 in reserves that cannot be allocated for anything else other than workers' comp. We have a number of those that are just like that. Our actual capital reserve, and then there's appropriated fund balance, and this could be a very long 10-minute Tuesday if you ever watch those. But I believe that our capital accounts are actually split up into 3 different funds because you cannot use, for instance, highway funds on a general fund project. You can't do it that way. You can take general funds and you can give it to the highway department, but you can't go the other way around because the general fund comprises every person in the town of Ogden, including the village. The highway fund only includes revenue that was generated from people outside the village. Again, confusing. But I believe that the general fund typically has somewhere around 2.5 million. Almost that. And again, when it is appropriated for something very specific, we do have reserves that can only be used for things like vehicles. And then we have a general fund that can be used on anything. But it's not $7, $8, $20 million. I mean, it's nothing like that. $2.5 million spent in any one year would absolutely cripple us. So if we have a budget shortfall of $2.5 million, that would be very, very bad. And that's why we don't generally offer that every year in our budget.
Okay, but in the budget, what line items would it be that would add up to what you just spoke of?
In the budget itself, I don't believe that we show our reserve accounts because we're not allocating reserve account dollars over and above what Jerry explained for the budget itself.
But there's possibly a couple $1 million, if I understood that, that you guys could come up with a capital project that wasn't necessarily in our budget for us to talk about, and then you guys just spend it how you choose.
I think I understand what you're saying, and based on what I think I'm understanding, the answer is yes. Yeah, if we needed $1.5 million for a project, the board would have to pass a resolution because it wasn't budgeted dollars. And some of that sometimes is subject to public referendum, meaning that if enough of the community says, we don't want this, you can sign a petition and then it's forced to be on the ballot. So it would be very hard for the board to just somehow spend $1 million without the public knowing.
Okay. Town attorney, do you foresee having a town attorney at the town board meetings going forward, or are we gonna be able to save that money and not have an attorney at the town board meetings?
I am very nervous when we do not have a town attorney at the town board meetings, mostly because I don't want to say the wrong thing.
You're our elected official, he's not.
That is correct. But in the same sense, I'm the elected official and our finance director is not. I think that a good leader, a good, effective leader, hires people that are much smarter than them in the areas where they are not. And I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. Not that anyone has ever accused me of that. And by having I mean, everything that we vote on is a legal document or contract or something of that nature. And so I don't want to be part of a meeting where we do not have general counsel. So, yeah, we will be having general counsel continue, as has been tradition of this town and every town that I've seen.
And then I guess, just to build on the comment that was made earlier as far as the,
Can I say one other thing on that? I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. You know, my time on school boards, there was always more than one general counsel that was available. The village, I believe, has general counsel. I know that the county has had general counsel, so my experiences those are there because we're a bunch of people that maybe don't have the legal expertise and.
you think we are?
Well, that's why we have general counsel, right?
Yeah, but why? I mean, it just seems like we could decide a lot of things. We're not writing law every meeting.
Actually, every resolution then becomes legal tenure, so we actually sometimes have our general counsel draft these resolutions because they are of a legal nature.
Sure, but I guess I just don't see where they would need to be here. That's just my thought.
It's also a flat rate, so whether he's here or at home eating dinner, that's the rate we pay, so why not have him, since we're paying him anyways?
Well, you're only paying them to draw up the paperwork that's already here when we get here, right? I mean, then to pay him to be here also, wouldn't that?
No, we pay one annual rate for our town attorney, and that will continue with our next town
No
attorney.
matter how many hours we engage?
That is correct.
Okay.
The risk is on them. They did not get paid enough this past year, I will tell you.
Okay. Then just one final comment on the, item that was mentioned as far as the, community relations for the highway department of the $2,000, public relations. I'll just reiterate what I said a couple weeks ago. With having the internet and being able to call the highway department and your sign out there with your name on it, it just seems hard to believe that we need to also advertise in the newspaper for items as well. That just doesn't seem to me to be the best use of taxpayer dollars. And, I'm sorry, one other thing. What is excess interest?
Excess interest?
Yeah.
That would be a great Jerry question, but let me try. Is it that, interest that so when we put together our budgets, we have to project how much interest we're gonna get. But what Sherry will tell you is that they're proposing a 25 basis point reduction over the next, and so there's no way that we get to call up, the Federal Reserve and say, hey, what are you guys gonna do? Because that'd be insider trading. And so it is a projection. When we get, let me also answer it this way. When we put together our budgets, we look at the $8.9 million that is your tax dollars in local revenue. But you'll notice that the budget was $16+ million. The rest of that money is generated somewhere. As you mentioned, some of it's from permit fees and things of that nature, but it's a lot of sheds if we're just relying on permits. At the same time, we use the revenue in our interest, and we actually place it in our budget to offset expenses. We've been extremely fortunate over the last couple of years that we've actually underestimated the amount of interest income that we've received. So anything that goes above what we budgeted can honestly be used for pretty much anything. But at the same time, like you see in this resolution, we're extremely transparent. Even when it's extra money, we showcase that that's how it's going to be used. How did I do? Thank you.
I just have never heard of excess interest. I've never heard of that.
I would like to hear of more of it.
I never consider any money I get from the bank as excess.
Unfortunately, they as part of the budget, we are required to project. I mean, I'll say this, and I have to knock on every, instrument here, though. If, for whatever reason, there's not a single child that signs up next year for pre-K, we will not have any of that revenue. right? So we're taking a shot in the dark based on past practice or current market on what those revenues might be. So we hope we get close, and then we hope that it's definitely higher than our expenses.
All right, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Anybody else that has a question for the board on this? Seeing none, I will close the privilege of the floor. There are no reports and remittances or town audits this meeting, my goodness. I will mention a correspondence that is listed on the agenda as part of the town officers' reports. So I will start with this. Last week, Town Hall closed early for our annual employee celebration event. It was fantastic, and so glad that so many employees showed up and allowed us to really show our appreciation for them. So thanks for everybody that came. Our annual fall newsletter has been mailed out to residents. It's also online on our brand-new website. I think I mentioned like 3 things there for that. I'd encourage you to check out the new website, but you can also check out our fall newsletter that's on there now too. Last Friday, I had my Monroe County Supervisors Association meeting. There's 2 very interesting topics. One of them is a countywide initiative on composting. Certainly opposed to any new mandates there, but I am very supportive of them trying to figure out new ways for them to come up with composting ideas. We also had a conversation on the now, I don't know if it's postponed or what, but the even year elections that came down from the governor's office that now has been stalled or appealed by a local judge. So it kind of makes this next year's election cycle a little bit interesting, but for now it is postponed until it goes through that appeals process. Last night, I had the opportunity to represent this board in giving a proclamation to the Spencerport School Board for appreciation for their voluntary efforts in managing the school district. Included in correspondence, you'll see that I did receive a letter from Judge Dave Moranti announcing his retirement. His last day will be December 31st of this year. Since he will be retiring before the end of his term, this board is tasked with appointing his replacement to serve until the next election, which will be next November. So that will be conversation for the board. In a similar note and theme, Mr. Shum last year announced his retirement, and that the board will tonight consider the appointment of new general counsel. One of the conditions was that we would continue to receive general counsel in a manner that is, we pay you no matter how many hours you work here, and came to an agreeable amount for that. Similar, the town has spent some time not just seeking new general counsel, but seeking a full-time replacement for a retired assessor. And I would say that, you know, we definitely received multiple resumes and people interested in the position that we felt might not be the best fit for us. And in trying to think outside the box, I sort of asked for the board's support on this, and tonight there is an item on the agenda to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Gates. Their assessor's been there for a good long time. Saves the town about $50,000 to enter into that agreement. And so that is for now and for hopefully the next couple of years. That person will not only provide those services, but will provide a wealth of experience and training for our staff here. And you know, my goal as the supervisor of the town is to make sure that we not only have qualified and competent department heads, but to make sure that they also equally have a number 2 that's waiting in the wings and training and can basically step in should the department head retire or decide to transition someplace else. So we're excited for that. Met with the organizers once again of Spencerport's Enchanted Village to continue collaboration talks with them. October 28th is National First Responder Day. Thank you all and thank all of you that are first responders and everybody in our community especially that provides the services for the town of Ogden. Very much appreciated. As mentioned before, we are discussing 2 items in work session, which happens after the regular session. One would be on a proposal to review, I would say at this point, it's a preliminary sketch to renovate Recreation Department facility to enhance senior programs. This concept includes ADA bathrooms, a kitchen, new service desk layout, and floor plan for additional office space, which is greatly needed as well. This will be the first time this board is seeing this, so this is not a tomorrow project by any means. Second, I'm told, and I believe that we'll be talking about proposed ideas for the town fuel island with some updated information for the board to consider. That is it for me. Councilman Baker.
You said everything I was gonna say.
Sorry.
I've got nothing right now.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Gerbino.
Nothing to report.
Councilman Hinman.
No report.
Councilman Toms.
No report.
Highway Superintendent Dan Wolf.
No report.
Town Clerk Noel Burley.
Well, we are wrapping up school tax collection, and we are currently sending out the receipts for all the tax payments. Unfortunately, it's hard to send out receipts when we're in the middle of tax collection, so that's what we're doing right now.
Very good, thank you. Okay, there being no other unfinished business, we will move to new business. Madam Clerk.
Resolution 259, authorizing budget changes needed to accurately reflect mowing expenses at town cemeteries and to properly account for employee salary and benefits and to reflect a reallocation of revenue.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Toms, seconded by Councilman Baker. Any discussion on this? I do want to actually take an extra second to expound on this. This is more of a legal law statute. When we propose our preliminary budget and deliver it to the town clerk, there's certain things we're not allowed to do in modifying the budget, but there's certain things within the budget we can do to modify. In the pre-work session, the finance director explained these items, but essentially, there were things within the budget that just still needed fine-tuning, information that we received quite late in the game. And so out of an abundance of transparency, we pass a resolution to modify those things prior to considering our passage of the full budget, if anybody needed that. Anybody else? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next, please.
Resolution 260, adopting the 2025 preliminary budget as the town of Ogden's 2025 annual budget.
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Baker, seconded by Councilman Gerbino. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Thanks again, Sherry.
Resolution 261, amending the proposed price list and resolution 252 of 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hinman, seconded by Councilman Toms. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next, please.
Authorizing Ogden Town Supervisor Mike Sale to execute a contract agreement with Rizzo and Rizzo Law Office, PLLC, for the furnishing of general legal services.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Gerbino, seconded by Councilman Hinman. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next, please.
Resolution 263, authorizing Ogden Town Supervisor Mike Sale to execute an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Gates for shared services for the assessments.
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Baker, seconded by Councilman Toms. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next, please.
Resolution 264, authorizing the town of Ogden to contribute $1,500 to the Village of Spencerport's 2024 Enchanted Village Celebration.
I'll move that.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hinman, seconded by Councilman Gerbino. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next, please.
Resolution 265, authorizing a budget modification necessary to accommodate the purchase of a pickup truck to be used by the town of Ogden Building Department.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Tom, seconded by Councilman Baker. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next, please.
Resolution 266, authorizing Acton Town Supervisor Mike Sale to execute a professional services agreement with Labella Associates DPC for the GIS services for 2025.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Hinman, seconded by Councilman Gerbino. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next, please.
Resolution 267, authorizing a budget transfer necessary to accommodate the purchase of office furniture in the Town of Ogden Highway Department.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Gerbino, seconded by Councilman Baker. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next, please.
Resolution 268, authorizing the hiring of Christina Parks and Melina Ruiz as part-time laborers in the Parks and Recreation Department for the nutrition program at the senior center.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Tom, seconded by Councilman Hinman. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next, please.
Resolution 269, promoting Susan Dugan to the position of full-time building inspector.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Hinman, seconded by Councilman Baker. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Congratulations. Next, please.
Resolution 270, authorizing the hiring of Lillian Bertuvsky
Sure.
and Michaela Bollinger as limited part-time recreation attendants in the Town of Ogden Parks and Recreation Department.
So moved. I'll second it.
Moved by Councilman Gerbino, seconded by Councilman Toms. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next, please.
Resolution 271, authorizing Ogden Town Supervisor Mike Sale to execute a memorandum of agreement by and between the Town of Ogden and the Ogden Police Club regarding paid parental leave benefits and medical buyout option provisions to union members.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Hinman, seconded by Councilman Toms. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next, please.
Resolution 272, authorizing Ogden Town Supervisor Mike Sale to execute a memorandum of agreement by and between the Town of Ogden and the International Brotherhood Teamsters Local Union Number 118 regarding paid parental leave benefits.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Toms, seconded by Councilman Hinman. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. I would like to entertain a motion that we move to work session.
I'll second it.
I was entertaining a motion.
So moved.
Sorry. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, folks, we are adjourning the regular session to a work session. It's much more of a formal conversation. You're welcome to stay, but that is the end of the regular town board meeting. Thank you for being here.